Good evening, everybody. President Obama, his Attorney General, Bill de Blasio, and Al Sharpton tonight are all running as fast as they can from their past anti-police rhetoric in what has been for months now their national campaign of ignorance. The president himself saying demonstrations were necessary to trigger Americans' consciences. The mayor's about-face coming 2 days after two New York City police officers were shot down while in their car on a Brooklyn street. They were killed by a man mentally ill who declared on social media that he intended to revenge the deaths of Eric Garner and Michael Brown. Here is Mayor de Blasio today calling for demonstrations and protests to at least pause, and reading from the same script at two separate events.
Regardless of people's viewpoints, that everyone recognize it's a time to step back and just focus on these families. I think it's a time for everyone to put aside political debates, put aside protests, put aside all of the things that we will talk about in due time. I'm asking everyone, and this is across the spectrum, to put aside protests, put aside demonstrations. Until these funerals are past, let's focus just on these families and what they have lost.
This, of course, the same mayor who met with the anti-police demonstrator leaders just last Friday, and the same mayor who insisted on describing a demonstrator's assault on two police lieutenants as an alleged attack, despite the overwhelming video evidence that absolutely and clearly supported the police officers. And the same mayor who today refused to acknowledge his role in what has been a campaign of ignorance and hatred of police, and instead he tried to blame the media.
I don't see reports on the many decent, good people. I don't see reports on the everyday cops who do the exemplary thing and hold the line and show restraint and discipline no matter what invective is hurled at them. You know what? I am telling you over again. I am telling you over again, that's how you want to portray the world, but we know a different reality. There are some people who do that. It's wrong. It's wrong. They shouldn't do that. It's immoral. It's wrong. It's nasty. It's negative. They should not do that. But they, my friend, are not the majority. Stop portraying them as the majority.
A sudden shift in tone coming from the White House as well. Attorney General Eric Holder's top deputy today apparently told to abandon his boss's insistence that we are a nation of racists. James Cole today called incidents of police abuse and racial profiling now isolated, not ubiquitous and pervasive as Obama, Holder, Sharpton, and de Blasio insisted just last week.
Do you believe at all that some of the violence against officers is a result of the Justice Department's efforts to try to address police tactics around the country?
I do not. I think that what you have to be able to do is have a conversation about isolated instances where we see profiling or we see excessive force.
Well, now they want a conversation. Before, they just wanted us listening to them. Now those incidents are isolated, not pervasive, isolated, not cultural or systemic. Cole's improved command of reality and language coming after Attorney General Holder just 2 weeks ago said, quote, police practices, implicit bias, and pervasive community distrust are real and significant. Here is President Obama just a day before, calling for more protests and demonstrations, suggesting America is a racist nation, and claiming some police departments just don't want to end racial bias in their ranks.
As long as they're peaceful, I think they're necessary. The vast majority of law enforcement officers are doing a really tough job, and most of them are doing it well. But a combination of bad training in some cases, a combination in some cases of departments that really are not trying to root out biases, and in a lot of cases, subconscious fear of folks who look different. All of this contributes to a national problem that's going to require a national solution.
A national problem with a national solution, which today, 3 days after two police officers were shot and killed in New York, has become a very local problem, an isolated problem in the new rhetoric of those leading the campaign of ignorance. Mayor de Blasio now faces what has become a firestorm of criticism from the most diverse police department in this country, which patrols the safest big city in the country. Listen to this blistering, scathing condemnation of de Blasio from Patrick Lynch, the president of the Patrolmen's Benevolent Association.
We tried to warn. It must not go on. It cannot be tolerated. That blood on the hands starts on the steps of City Hall in the office of the mayor.
Our first guest tonight says Lynch has it exactly right, and de Blasio is wrong. Bernard Kerik is a former New York City Police Commissioner, also the former New York City Department of Corrections Commissioner, the founder and CEO of the Kerik Group. Good to have you with us.
Thanks, Lou.
I just cannot believe that I listened to the mayor start talking about now is a time not for protest, demonstration, and politics, but focusing on the families, which is one thing he didn't do in the course of the first 48 hours.
Well, I would agree with him. Now's the time to focus on the family. You have 2 dead cops that have to be buried. It's extremely important that the city looks out for and takes care of their families, looks out for their children, and gives them the sending off that they deserve with honor and dignity. It's a tragic, horrific time for the city.
It is. It's a city run by a man who, until this point, until this very day, had been one of those leading a national campaign of hatred against law enforcement, a campaign, as I've styled it on this broadcast, a campaign of ignorance that's got to end. It is, at this point, not ending.
I think he's going to have to realize that rhetoric, that anti-cop, racist rhetoric that's been perpetrated by him and Sharpton, primarily in this city, it has to stop. The assassin of these 2 cops, he had mental illness. You know, if you want to really dig down and look at things, why was this guy out on the street? You can look at the criminal justice system. You can look at, you know, why he went to prison, why he wasn't treated. You know, they'll get into that. But at the end of the day, that guy killed those 2 cops because he believed all the things that was said by de Blasio, by Sharpton and others about the Michael Brown and Garner incidents. Things that were lies. Things that were lies. There were lies perpetrated over the last several weeks, months, concerning those 2 incidents.
Well, the President of the United States, for crying out loud, Bernie, has been saying things, as you just heard, that racism in this country is pervasive. We've got some clucking, lapdogs in the national media rather than watchdogs who simply have let him go unchallenged.
I completely disagree that racism is pervasive in the police community around this country. We'd be naive to think that some cops didn't have racial issues. We'd be insane.
Yeah, but if that's what they were saying, we wouldn't be here. What they were saying is pervasive, systemic,
and
ubiquitous.
And they're wrong. There's 2 substantial things they're wrong about. The pervasive racism, 1, and 2, cops go into minority communities to target and harass minorities. No, they do not. They don't. They go into those communities to address crime. They go into those communities because they're attacking crime. They're not targeting blacks and minorities. They're targeting crime. And we prove that in New York City because those minority communities have been they have received the most substantial reductions in crime in the nation. Violent crime down 85%, homicides down by 80%. Yes, they went into those minority communities. They did a job there, and the minority communities are much safer today than they've ever been.
And it's important to note that in nearly all of those instances, they were asked to come into that community to solve a problem, to stop a crime, to solve a crime.
That's right. And that's right. The people that call for the cops, those cops don't answer that radio that they're dispatched from and ask what the color of the person is that's making the call, or they're not going. They go, they put their lives on the line, they do it every single day, and this has been the reward that they've gotten for it.
The mayor, do you believe that he has blood on his hands?
I believe the rhetoric that he has spewed over the last several weeks is partially the blame for this incident, yes.
Is there, in your judgment, a clear direction forward? Because the video of those police officers turning their back on the mayor as he went into the hospital, I mean, that's one of the most compelling images I've ever seen.
I think the direction forward has to be, I think will be brokered, if you will, between Bratton, the mayor, and the police department. Bill Bratton, I have an enormous amount of respect for the police commissioner. I think he's done a tremendous job. He's the architect of crime reduction in this country. I think he has to fix this relationship. But the mayor has to understand he is the commander-in-chief in the police department. He needs to support these men and women.
I saw the mayor in a moment of which he had been exuding contrition, if you would, over 2 appearances. When he started talking to the reporter and talking about the media's role in what has become this campaign of ignorance. I mean, I was astonished because it was clear that he is not accepting responsibility. It is clear that his contrition is more convenient, expedient than it is sincere. I don't personally have a lot of hope for what this man can do intellectually or emotionally to bridge a gap, a divide between himself and 35,000 members of New York's finest who keep the city safe. I mean, what we have watched is ignorance, and it's unchallenged ignorance by most of the national media.
Well, nobody would combat him. Nobody would say, knock it off. What you're purporting is a lie. The stuff about race, the stuff, the anti-cop stuff, the stuff, you know, the talking about the Michael Brown incident, as tragic as the Garner and Brown incidents are, Michael Brown did not have his hands up. Michael Brown attacked a cop. He attacked the cop. He resisted arrest. He tried to take his gun. And then you have people saying it was race. Neither one of those incidents, neither one was race-related. And Garner's family, his daughter, tragically, and his wife have said that. Yeah. But you still have leaders in this country that have said otherwise.
Racially exploitive, whether their names are Obama or Holder or de Blasio or Sharpton, as you said. Good to see you, Mr. Carrick.
Thank you,
Thanks so much. Bernard Carrick. North Korea's internet today suffered a massive outage just days after President Obama promised proportional retaliation for the country's devastating cyber attack on Sony Pictures. The Pentagon denies U.S. involvement today, while the president denies our nation is in a cyber war with Pyongyang.
No, I don't think it was an act of war. I think it was an act of cyber vandalism that was very costly, very expensive. We take it very seriously. We will respond proportionally.
But that seemingly contradicts the 2011 decision by the president's administration to label all computer cyber attacks from other nations an act of war. President Obama also went on to say he's considering adding North Korea to the government's list of countries sponsoring terrorism. And an attorney for Sony now says they will eventually release The Interview, the movie, but it's still not clear on what platform or when. We're coming right back. Stay with us. While President Obama frolics on a Hawaiian beach and plays a couple of rounds, this country's true heroes have lost faith in their commander-in-chief, General Jack Keane, on the morale of our military. Next.